Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. Today, I'm reading another chapter out of my South Carolina Ghosts from the Coast of Mountains book by Nancy Roberts. And the chapter out of here is called The Ghost of Daufuskie Island. So without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? Daufuskie, the very name, is filled with mystery. Owners of the colorful luxury boats that form a bright necklace around Hilton Head Harbor show little interest in the dark island across the water. Its dim, inscrutable shape just a few miles away is a different world, a world that resembles the beclouded past seen by early adventurers. 12-year-old Nick Betty loved the island from the day he and his family moved here. The shadowy gloom of the pine barrens became his domain. The sound of the ocean and calls of the seabirds, his music. Except for occasional trips with his family and days in the island's two-room school, Nick's life was not unlike that of a boy who might have lived on a South Carolina coastal island 100 years ago. When Nick, Jessica, and Rusty were not marveling at strange sea creatures cast up on the beach or exploring the dense forest of live oaks, pines, and cedars, there was another place that drew them like a magnet. It was the eerie old cemetery where stained stones, some crazily askew, marked the early graves for the wealthier. There were elaborate above-ground mausoleums, but the children were most interested in one mausoleum which had a few bricks missing from the front. They left a black gaping hole that attracted Nick's curiosity. Now, you see, exploring a old cemetery, it's not a bad thing to do, but I wouldn't go into one that has some bricks missing and you can see right through to where the corpses are laying. That'll creep me out for sure. They just need to be careful. By placing his face against the cool brick and staring down into the darkness of the tomb below, Nick could see the coffins. One of them was curved like the body of a woman, and it stood leaning against the back wall of the underground tomb. If you're burying somebody in a mausoleum, they should be either flat on the ground or inside the wall of the mausoleum, depending on how it's constructed. I never heard of somebody actually placing a coffin like this, just standing straight right up. I mean, that thing could fall over. Who could she have been, and why was her coffin left resting against the wall? As Nick's new island home, something was always happening. His father had begun to remodel the old house immediately. Trips were made to the mainland in the boat to bring back antique furnishings. When the weather was sunny and warm, there were frequent picnics on the beach with his tall, graceful mother, who had adapted happily to the island lifestyle. While his parents were absent on trips to the mainland, there was always Sal, a family friend who stayed with Nick and his brother and sister. Sal, a friendly, fascinating man, was visiting from his native Italy. Soon he would return to occupy an inherited family castle. Sal was cheerful, good-natured, and could usually be counted upon for a game of catch or frisbee throwing. But one day they could do neither, for it was raw and cold. Nick helped Sal build a fire, and while Sal sat reading his Italian language newspaper, Nick played solitaire on the floor. At first he was only faintly aware of something moving nearby. It must have continued for some time and been observed out of the corner of his eye. But what the mind cannot accept as possible, the eye also refuses to see. It may even have gone on for as long as half an hour before Nick admitted to it to himself. When he did, he just sat there staring, his hand with the card ready to play still in midair. The rocker between him and Sal was rocking gently and noisily back and forth. Sal, absorbed in his newspaper, was oblivious to the motion of the chair almost beside him. At that moment there was the sound of footsteps on the porch, and Nick looked toward the door. Christmas was just 2 weeks away, and his mother and father were back from the main lane loaded with packages. Now, I gotta admit, having a Christmas celebration on an island property would not be that bad at all, but I'll be excited too, just seeing folks bringing in packages. But anyway, how can a friend of yours be so absorbed into his newspaper that he cannot hear the rocking? Really into his newspaper that he just can't hear it that good, he won't even focus on it. It was after the holidays before Nick saw anything unusual again. He and Sal were once more alone in the living room. Jessica and Rusty were off with their parents, but Nick had wanted to stay on the island with Sal. Sal sat in his favorite chair. His head, with the curly but graying hair, had fallen forward on his chest. Oh, and here's a picture of the old Daufuskie lighthouse. The light was once perched on the top of this gable. This looks like an old farmhouse style to me, but looks like a charming place to live in. The deep-set eyes, with their almost transparent lids, had closed, and he had dropped off to sleep. Nick could hear his measured breathing, each breath followed by a faint whistling sound at the end. It didn't disturb Nick's reading at all, for he was used to it. But he was soon aware of a noise that was unfamiliar. Upstairs, the bedroom door closed, and footsteps could be heard in the hallway overhead approaching the stairs. Then, every so slowing, as thought someone might be holding onto the rail, the footsteps could be heard again, staring down the stairs. Nick leaned over and shook Sal, holding a finger warningly before his own lips. Sal, wake up, wake up, wake up! Why? Stop shaking me. Be quiet. Can you hear the footsteps? Footsteps? Where? But at least Sal was whispering, coming down the steps, into the room here where we are. Yes. Suddenly, Sal was alert as a cat listening for a sound in the night. The footsteps stopped. Neither Sal nor Nick moved, and for a time all was quiet. They heard the loud tick of the pine grandfather clock. They heard the beating of their own hearts. Then the footsteps started. This time they sounded as if they were beginning at the landing. Nick gripped Sal's hand hard, not so much from fear as excitement. He knew how many steps there were, and he began to count them. 4 more to go, then 3, then 2, and now the last step. Whatever it was must be here in the room with them. Nick and Sal stared over at the foot of the steps, but no one was there. I heard someone coming down the steps, Sal. I know I did. Sal looked bewildered and uneasy, but he tried to shrug it off. Yes, I heard something, Nick, but nothing is there. But you heard the noise, too. All old houses have noises, and this one is just like all the others. Oh, he's trying to push it off, thinking that it's an old house noise that might creak every now and then. No. If you hear actual footsteps going down the stairs, and when you look up the stairs, there ain't nobody coming down them, that ain't no normal creaking of the house. But it seems like he's one of those guys that has to see it to believe it. Noises, yes, but Sal, look at that chair. A few feet from Sal was an old gooseneck rocker. Not the prettiest chair in the room, for the flower black damask was worn and even threadbare in places, but the chair itself was comfortable. As Sal and Nick stared at it, the chair rocked slowly back and forth and back and forth. Sal rose as if he would seize it, but the instant he started toward it, the rocker stopped. Not gradually, nor slowly, but as if an invisible hand had come down firmly on the arm of the chair and stopped it abruptly. Even then, Sal never wanted to admit he had seen anything out of the ordinary.